Admiral Park Tae-ho stood alone on the bridge of the UES Indomitable. His hands were clasped behind his back, and his eyes were fixed on the tactical display floating before him. Red dots filled the screen like a swarm of angry insects. Each dot was an enemy warship. He counted them slowly in his head, though he already knew the number. 3,000. The Dominion had sent 3,000 warships to destroy humanity. Behind him, his crew worked in tense silence. They had seen the same numbers. They knew what was coming. The year was 2347. Humanity had been traveling among the stars for 200 years. They had built colonies on distant worlds and learned to call the void of space their home. But in the grand scale of the galaxy, they were still children. The Council of the Stars had ruled this part of the universe for 10,000 years. 12 ancient species sat on that council, and they decided who lived and who died among the younger races. Humanity had refused to kneel. When the Council demanded that humans abandon their colonies in the Kepler system, Earth said no. That single word had sealed their fate. Now the Dominion Armada, the military fist of the Council, had come to teach humanity a final lesson. Tae-ho turned to face his crew. Their faces were pale but determined. Young men and women who had trained their whole lives for a war they hoped would never come. He wished he could tell them everything would be fine. He wished he could promise them victory. But Tae-ho had never lied to his soldiers, and he would not start now. "The enemy outnumbers us, almost 8-1, he said calmly. "Our ships are smaller, and our weapons are weaker. By every measure that matters, we should lose this battle." He paused and let those words sink in. "But we are not fighting for conquest or glory. We are fighting for our homes, for our families, for the right to exist, and that is something worth dying for." The first wave of Dominion ships began their approach. Tae-ho watched them come. Their vessels were beautiful in a terrible way. Silver hulls that curved like ocean waves. Plasma lances that glowed with blue fire. Each one was 3 times the size of a human cruiser. "All ships," Tae-ho spoke into the fleet communication channel, "engage the enemy." The battle began. Human ships surged forward to meet the Dominion fleet. Missiles streaked through the blackness of space. Energy beams cut bright lines across the void. For a few glorious minutes, it almost seemed like an equal fight. Then the Dominion. Weapons found their targets. The UES Braveheart was the first to die. A plasma lance cut through its hull like a hot knife through paper. The ship broke apart in a bloom of fire and debris. 300 souls lost in an instant. More ships followed. The UES Iron Will, the UES Starbound, the UES New Horizon. One by one, humanity's defenders were torn apart. Tae-ho watched each death on his tactical display. Each red dot that turned black was a ship full of people he had trained, promoted, and sent into battle in 6 hours. Humanity lost 120 ships. The Dominion lost 17. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, her voice shaking, "we cannot sustain these losses. If we continue, we will have nothing left to defend Earth." Tae-ho knew she was right. His heart screamed at him to keep fighting, to make the enemy pay for every life they took. But his mind knew better. Dead heroes could not protect the innocent. "All ships, fall back to the inner planets," he ordered. "We will make them fight for every step." The retreat was painful, but necessary. Human ships pulled back toward Mars and Earth, leaving behind the bodies of their fallen. The Dominion followed slowly, savoring their victory. On the Dominion flagship, War Marshal Corrin watched the humans flee. He was an old soldier, ancient by human standards. He had crushed rebellions on 100 worlds. This one would be no different. He activated a communication link to the Council homeworld. The face of High Arbiter Velith appeared before him. Velith was the leader of the Council, a being so old that he had seen stars born and die. "Report," Velith commanded. "The humans fight bravely but foolishly," Corrin said. "Their technology is primitive. Their tactics are predictable. Estimated time to complete subjugation: 40 standard cycles." Velith nodded slowly. His ancient eyes showed no emotion. Make an example of them, he said. When you are done, I want nothing left. No cities, no monuments, nothing to remember them by. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy the Council. It will be done, Corin replied. The communication ended. Corin looked out at the distant blue dot that was Earth. So small, so fragile. He almost felt pity for the creatures living there almost. Back on the Indomitable, Tahoe received a message from the asteroid belt. It was Dr. Yoon Hanna, the lead scientist of a project so secret that only 12 people in the entire human government knew it existed. Admiral Hanna's face appeared on his private screen. I heard about the battle. I am sorry, how long? Tahoe asked. He did not need to explain what he meant. Hanna hesitated. 18 months. Maybe more. The technology is unlike anything we have ever attempted. We are trying to harness forces that the Council species gave up on thousands of years ago. 18 months. Tahoe closed his eyes. Could humanity survive that long? Continue your work, Doctor, he said. Do whatever it takes. Spend whatever you need. You are our only hope. After the call ended, Tahoe walked through the corridors of his ship. He eventually found himself in the medical bay. A hospital ship docked alongside the Indomitable. Rows of wounded soldiers filled every bed. Young faces wrapped in bandages. Missing limbs. Burns that would never fully heal. He stopped beside a young man who could not have been older than 20. The soldier was asleep, his chest rising and falling slowly. Tahoe placed a gentle hand on the young man's shoulder. 18 months, he whispered to himself. We just need to survive 18 months. Outside, the Dominion fleet continued its slow advance toward Earth. They had all the time in the universe. Humanity did not. 14 months had passed since the first battle. Earth was no longer the blue and green world that humans remembered from old photographs. Dominion orbital strikes had burned the forests, boiled the oceans along the coastlines, and turned great cities into fields of ash and broken stone. The survivors had moved underground, living in tunnels and bunkers that stretched for hundreds of kilometers beneath the surface. But humanity had not given up. Every day, they fought back. Small ships attacked Dominion supply lines. Soldiers launched guerrilla raids on enemy bases. They lost more battles than they won. They made the invaders pay a price in blood for every victory. Admiral Park Tahoe kept his fleet alive through a combination of clever tactics and pure stubbornness. He never fought when the odds were impossible. He struck only when he could hurt the enemy and escape. The Dominion had expected the war to last 40 cycles. 14 months later, they were still fighting, deep in the asteroid belt. Far from the burning Earth, Dr. Yoon Hanna had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes were red, and her hands trembled from too much coffee and too little rest. Around her, dozens of scientists worked at computer terminals and experimental equipment. They were trying to do something that every advanced species in the galaxy had declared impossible. They were trying to harness dark matter. Dark matter was the invisible skeleton of the universe. It did not reflect light. It did not interact with normal matter in any way that could be easily measured. But it was everywhere, holding galaxies together with its gravity. The Council species had tried to use it as an energy source thousands of years ago. They had all failed. The physics were too strange. It was too dangerous. Humanity did not have the luxury of being careful. Hanna stared at the latest test results on her screen. 3 test pilots had already died. Their ships had been torn apart by dimensional rifts when the dark matter engines became unstable. Each death weighed on her soul like a stone. A voice interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Yoon, I want to be the next test pilot. She turned to find Captain Kong Ji-ho standing behind her. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a calm face that never seemed to show fear. He commanded the fighter squadron that protected the research station. Absolutely not, Hanna said. You are too valuable. We need you to defend this facility. Ji-ho smiled, but there was no humor in it. If this project fails, there will be nothing left to defend. Let me be useful, Doctor. Let me fly. Hanna wanted to refuse. She had watched 3 good pilots die in that experimental ship. The thought of adding Ji-ho to that list made her feel sick, but she also knew he was right. "Fine," she said quietly. "We launch tomorrow." The next morning, Ji-ho climbed into the cockpit of the experimental vessel. It was an ugly ship, covered in sensors and exposed wiring. The dark matter engine sat in the center, humming with a sound that seemed to come from somewhere far away. Hannah spoke to him through the communication system. "Remember, if anything feels wrong, shut down the engine immediately. Do not try to be brave." Ji-ho laughed softly. "Being brave is my job, Doctor." The countdown began. 10, 9. 8. Ji-ho closed his eyes and thought of his mother back on Earth. Hiding in the tunnels beneath what used to be Seoul, he thought of his sister and her 2 young children. He thought of everyone who was counting on this test to succeed. 3, 2, 1. The dark matter engine activated. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Ji-ho felt something he could not describe. It was like the universe had folded around him, like he had stepped outside of reality itself. Through the cockpit window, he saw stars, but they looked wrong, distant, as if he was looking at them through a layer of dark water. "Captain Kong." "Report?" Hannah's voice crackled through the speakers. "I am alive," Ji-ho replied. His voice sounded strange in his own ears. "The engine is stable. I think it worked." In the control room, Hannah and her team stared at their screens in disbelief. The ship had done exactly what they had hoped. It had phased out of normal space. For 30 seconds, it was invisible to every sensor. It existed somewhere between dimensions. Ji-ho returned to normal space without any damage. When he climbed out of the cockpit, his legs were shaking, but he was smiling. "It was like swimming through the bones of the universe," he said. "I cannot explain it any better than that." Hannah grabbed his arm. "We did it. We actually did it." While the scientists celebrated, Commander Cho Dae-sung was far from the asteroid belt on a very different mission. He was the head of military intelligence, a man who lived in shadows and secrets. His job was to learn what the enemy was planning before they could act. He had infiltrated a Dominion communication hub on one of Jupiter's moons. What he found there made his blood run cold. The Council did not plan to conquer Earth. They planned to erase it. Dominion documents described a project to terraform the planet after the war. They would change the atmosphere, the temperature, and the very chemistry of the soil. When they were done, nothing human would be able to survive there. It was not just a military defeat they wanted. It was the complete extinction of humanity. Dae-sung transmitted his findings to Admiral Tae-ho through an encrypted channel. When Tae-ho read the report, he sat in silence for a long time. Then he called an emergency meeting of Earth's remaining leaders. "They mean to kill us all," he told them. "Not just our soldiers. Not just our cities. All of us. Every man, woman, and child. There will be no surrender. There will be no peace. We either win this war, or we cease to exist." The decision was unanimous. Every resource humanity had left would go to Project Void. Every shipyard would build dark matter vessels in secret. Every scientist would work day and night on the Council homeworld. Emissary Desha reviewed reports from the front lines. Human resistance should have collapsed months ago. Instead, they fought harder than ever. She felt a growing unease that she could not explain. She brought her concerns to High Arbiter Velith. "My lord, the humans are not behaving like a defeated species. I believe we should consider negotiation." Velith looked at her with ancient cold eyes. "Vermin often thrash most violently just before death," he said. "Do not waste my time with such foolishness again." Daisha bowed and left, but the feeling of dread stayed with her. Back in the asteroid belt, Hannah stood before the first completed dark matter warship. It was beautiful and terrible. Its hull absorbed light like a black hole. Its engines hummed with frequencies that made nearby workers feel like something was watching them from very far away. She named it the Void Breaker. Hannah stared at her creation for a long time. She felt no pride, only a deep and quiet fear. She had built a weapon that could save humanity. But something in her soul whispered that she had also opened a door that could never be closed. Admiral Morthal stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled. Below him, through the massive viewing window, Earth hung like a wounded jewel in the darkness of space. Smoke rose from its countenance. Its oceans were gray with ash. The planet was dying, and Morthal had come to finish the job. Behind his flagship, 5,000 Dominion warships waited in perfect formation. It was the largest armada ever assembled against a single species. Morthal had been given a simple order: destroy everything. Leave nothing alive. Make Earth a warning to any other species that might dream of defying the Council. He activated the broadcast system that would send his message to every human receiver on the planet and in orbit. Humans. His voice echoed across the system. Your war is over. Surrender your leaders for public execution, and we will spare your children to serve as laborers in our colonies. This is not cruelty. This is mercy. You have 1 hour to respond. The response came in less than a minute. Admiral Park Taeho's face appeared on the Dominion screens. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his uniform was worn, but his voice was steady and his eyes were bright. Come and take them, Taeho said simply. Then the transmission ended. Morthal laughed. He had heard such brave words from 100 dying civilizations. They all said the same things in the end. It never mattered. All ships, advance, he ordered. Show them what happens to those who defy the Council of the Stars. The Dominion Armada moved forward like a wave of silver death. Human ships rose to meet them. 300 vessels against 5,000? It was not a battle. It was an execution. Morthal watched the fight from his command chair. Human ships died by the dozen. Their missiles were swatted aside. Their energy beams barely scratched Dominion hulls. In the first 30 minutes, humanity lost 80 ships. The Dominion lost 2. The human fleet fell back toward Earth. Morthal pressed forward, eager to finish this tedious war. His sensors showed no hidden reinforcements, no secret weapons. Nothing but a desperate, dying species making its last stand. Then reality itself tore open. 12 ships emerged from nowhere. They did not come from hyperspace. They did not appear on any sensor until they were already there. One moment, the space ahead was empty. The next moment, 12 vessels hung in the void like pieces of frozen shadow. They were black. Not painted black, but truly black, as if they were holes cut into the fabric of the universe. No light reflected from their hulls. No energy signature came from their engines. They simply existed, silent and terrible. Morthal stared at his tactical display. What are those? Identify them immediately. His officers scrambled at their stations. Their voices were confused and afraid. Unknown design, Admiral. Sensors cannot get a lock. It is like they are not fully here. On the bridge of the lead shadow ship, Captain Kong Ji-ho took a deep breath. His crew sat at their stations around him. They had trained for this moment for months. They had given up everything for this chance. Lieutenant Bae Su-ben sat at the tactical station. She was young, barely 25, but her mind was sharper than anyone Ji-ho had ever served with. She had a gift for combat that could not be taught. All systems ready, Captain, she reported. Dark matter weapons charged. Ji-ho opened a channel to the other 11 ships of the Void Fleet. This is Captain Kang of the Voidbreaker. Today we show the galaxy that humanity will not go quietly into the night. All Void ships, weapons free. The dark matter weapons activated, they did not fire beams or missiles. Instead, they tore holes in reality. Small rifts opened near Dominion ships. The rifts pulled at everything around them with forces that should not exist. Metal bent. Shields collapsed. Ships were dragged into the wounds in space and simply vanished. Morthal watched in horror as 3 of his cruisers were swallowed by a black tear that opened beside them. One moment they were there, the next they were gone. No explosion. Just emptiness. Turn fire, he screamed. Destroy those ships. Every weapon in the Dominion fleet turned toward the 12 shadow vessels. Plasma lances fired. Missiles launched. Energy beams cut through space. Nothing hit. The Void Breaker and her sisters phased out of normal space for just a fraction of a second. The attacks passed through empty air. Then the human ships phased back in and fired again. More rifts opened. More Dominion ships died. Lieutenant Subin worked her console with calm precision. Her fingers danced across the controls as she targeted enemy vessels. Each press of a button ended another ship. Each adjustment of aim killed another 100 enemy soldiers. She felt nothing but cold focus. There would be time for feelings later. Now, there was only the mission. In 20 minutes, 800 Dominion warships were destroyed. 800 ships gone without leaving a single piece of debris. It was not a battle. It was a nightmare. Admiral Morthal did something that no Dominion commander had done in 3,000 years. He ordered a retreat. "All ships fall back to the outer system," he shouted, his voice breaking with fear. "Fall back now." The mighty Dominion armada turned and fled. 5,000 ships ran from 12. On the Void Breaker, the crew watched the enemy retreat in stunned silence. They had hoped the new weapons would work. They had prayed they would give humanity a chance. But none of them had expected this. G-Ho looked at his crew, at Subin, who was staring at her console with wide eyes, at the engineers who kept the dark matter engine running, at every person who had risked their life for this moment.
Ow.
"Send a message to Admiral Tejo," Jiho said quietly. "Tell him the test was successful." Far across the galaxy, War Marshal Corrin received Morthal's emergency transmission. He read the report 3 times because he could not believe it. 800 ships lost. A full retreat. Weapons that broke the laws of physics. For the first time in his very long life, Corrin felt fear. Real deep fear that settled in his stomach like a stone. He immediately contacted High Arbiter Velith. "My lord," Corrin said, struggling to keep his voice steady, "we have a problem." Velith's ancient eyes narrowed. "Explain." "The humans have developed weapons we do not understand. Weapons that may be more advanced than anything in the known galaxy. Our fleet was defeated. 800 ships lost in minutes." There was a long silence. When Velith spoke again, his voice was quiet and dangerous. "Impossible. The humans are primitives. They barely learned to travel between stars 2 centuries ago." "I am looking at the evidence, my lord. Unless we respond with everything we have, this war may not end the way we planned." Velith sat back in his throne. For the first time in thousands of years, doubt crept into his ancient mind. He had seen many species rise and fall. He had watched empires bloom and die like flowers in the garden of time. But he had never seen anything like this. The humans were no longer vermin to be exterminated. They were something else entirely. And that terrified him. On Earth. Survivors emerged from their underground shelters to see something they had not seen in over a year. Dominion ships were leaving. The endless bombardment had stopped. In bunkers across the planet, people wept with relief and joy. They did not know about the dark matter ships. They did not understand what had happened. All they knew was that hope had returned. Admiral Tejo allowed himself one small smile as he read Jiho's report. Then he straightened his uniform and began planning the next phase of the war. Survival was no longer enough. Now, humanity would take the fight to the stars. The Council of the Stars had not held an emergency session in 400 years. The great chamber on their capital world was designed to inspire. Pillars of crystal rose toward a ceiling painted with the images of conquered worlds. 12 thrones sat in a circle, each one belonging to a different elder species. For 10,000 years, those thrones had represented absolute power over this corner of the galaxy today. They represented fear. High Arbiter Velith called the session to order. His voice echoed through the chamber, but it lacked its usual confidence. "You have all seen the reports from the Sol system," he began. "The humans have developed weapons that our scientists cannot explain. I have summoned our greatest minds to provide answers." A group of scientists from various council species stepped forward. Their lead speaker, a being from a race that had been studying physics for 50,000 years, bowed low before the thrones. After analyzing the battle recordings, the scientists said, "We have reached a conclusion. The humans have somehow weaponized dark matter. They have created engines that allow their ships to phase between dimensions. They have built weapons that tear holes in the fabric of space itself." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Several council members shifted uncomfortably on their thrones. "That is impossible," one of them said. "Every species in this room tried to harness dark matter. Every one of us failed. The energies involved are too unstable. The mathematics do not work." The scientist lowered his head. "And yet the humans have done it. The evidence is undeniable. Their technology is now beyond anything in the known galaxy." The chamber erupted into chaos. Council members shouted at each other. Some demanded immediate peace negotiations. Others insisted on deploying extinction-level weapons. Ancient alliances cracked under the weight of panic. Velith slammed his hand against his throne, and the room fell silent. "We will not cower before apes who were living in caves while we were building empires," he said coldly. "We have options they cannot imagine. We will find a way to crush them." Emissary Thesha sat at the edge of the chamber, listening to the arguments. She had tried to warn them. Months ago, she had told Velith that the humans were not behaving like a defeated species. He had dismissed her concerns. Now those concerns had become a nightmare. She knew what she had to do. While the council descended into argument, humanity was on the move. Admiral Tejo launched Operation Starfall, a systematic campaign to push the Dominion out of human space. 30 dark matter warships were now operational, with more being built every week. The Void Fleet struck like ghosts. They appeared from nowhere, destroyed their targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Supply convoys were ambushed. Communication hubs went dark. Military bases that had stood for centuries were reduced to drifting wreckage. Captain Jiho led many of these missions. His crew had become something special. Months of exposure to the dark matter engines had changed them in ways that the doctors did not fully understand. They moved in perfect synchronization, as if they could read each other's thoughts. They sensed danger before it arrived. They whispered to things that no one else could see. Jiho noticed the changes in himself. His dreams were filled with vast, dark spaces and voices that spoke in languages older than the stars. Sometimes, when he looked in the mirror, he thought he saw his eyes shimmer with impossible colors. He told no one. The war was more important than his fears. The Battle of Proxima was the first major offensive of the counterattack. The Dominion had occupied the Proxima colony for 8 months, using its people as forced labor. Admiral Tahoe sent the Voidbreaker and 5 other dark matter ships to liberate it. Lieutenant Zuben distinguished herself in that battle. When a Dominion counterattack caught the human fleet off guard, she took command of the weapons array and single-handedly destroyed 12 enemy cruisers in 4 minutes. Her tactical innovations became standard training for all Void Fleet officers. After the battle, Jiho found her sitting alone in the observation deck, staring at the stars. "You saved a lot of lives today," he said. Su-Dashbin did not look at him. "I also took a lot of lives. Thousands of enemy soldiers died because of me. They would have killed millions of our people if you had not stopped them." "I know." She finally turned to face him. Her eyes were tired but determined. "I know the math. I know why we fight. But sometimes I wonder what this war is turning us into." Jiho sat down beside her. He did not have an answer. He wondered the same thing. Far from the front lines, Commander Desong received a secret message through channels that should not have existed. Emissary Thesha wanted to meet. He traveled to a neutral station on the edge of council space, disguised as a merchant. Thesha was waiting in a private room, her alien features hidden beneath a hooded cloak. "I am part of a faction that wants peace," she said without greeting. "There are those of us who believe this war will destroy not just humanity, but the entire galactic order."
"What, son?"
"Why should I trust you?" "Because I am about to give you information that could end my career and my life." She handed him a data crystal. "This contains the current deployment of every Dominion fleet, every patrol route, every defensive position. Use it however you wish." Daesun took the crystal. "What do you want in return?" "A promise. When humanity wins this war, and I believe you will, promise me that you will not seek revenge. Promise me that you will offer mercy to those who surrender. He thought about the burned cities of Earth, the millions who had died, the children who would never see the sun again. I cannot promise that, he said honestly. But I will tell Admiral Tejo what you have asked. The final decision will be his. Desha nodded slowly. That is fair. Goodbye, Commander. I hope we meet again in better times. While the war raged across human space, Dr. Hannah made a discovery that kept her awake for 3 nights straight. She had been analyzing medical data from the Void Fleet crews. The changes she found were disturbing. Neural pathways were reorganizing themselves. Brain activity showed patterns that had never been recorded in any human being. The pilots were becoming something different. When she interviewed Jiho, he described his dreams to her. The dark spaces, the watching presence, the feeling that something vast and ancient was observing him from the other side. Hannah realized the truth with growing horror. The dark matter technology was not entirely a human invention. They had simply been the first species desperate enough to open the door. And something on the other side had helped them, for reasons they did not understand. She wrote a full report of her findings. Then she deleted it. The war was still being fought. Humanity still needed the Void Fleet. If she revealed the truth now, it could destroy morale and cost millions of lives. The secret would have to wait until victory was secured. She prayed she was making the right choice. On the Council homeworld, High Arbiter Velith made his own terrible decision. Conventional forces could not stop the humans. Their dark matter ships were too powerful. Every battle cost the Dominion more than it cost humanity. There was only one option left. He summoned his most trusted advisors to a chamber that had not been opened in 3,000 years. Inside was a weapon from the ancient wars, a device capable of triggering chain reactions in stars. They called it the Celestial Fire. I'll begin preparations, Velith commanded. If we cannot defeat humanity, we will burn their entire region of space to ash. We will destroy their sun and every star within 50 light years. His advisors stared at him in shock. My lord, that would kill trillions of beings, not just humans. Dozens of innocent species live in that region. Velith's eyes were cold. Acceptable losses. The alternative is allowing humanity to survive, and that is something I will never permit. The secret project began. Deep in the heart of Council space, the weapon that could end everything started to wake. Commander Desong burst into Admiral Tejo's office with fear in his eyes. In all their years of working together, Tejo had never seen Desong afraid. They are building a weapon, Desong said, his voice urgent. They call it the Celestial Fire. It can trigger chain reactions in stars. If they activate it, they will destroy our sun and everything within 50 light years. Tejo felt his blood turn cold. How long do we have? My sources say the weapon will be ready in 2 weeks. It is being assembled in the Council's home system. 2 weeks. Tejo stared at the map on his wall. The Council's home system was the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. Thousands of warships, orbital defense platforms, weapons that had guarded those worlds for 10,000 years. But there was no choice. If the Celestial Fire activated, humanity would cease to exist. Not just Earth, not just the colonies, everything. He called an emergency meeting of all Void Fleet commanders. We are attacking the Council homeworld, he announced. All 52 dark matter warships. Everything we have. This is not about victory anymore. This is about survival. Captain Jiho studied the tactical data. The enemy fleet in the Council's home system numbered over 8,000 ships. Even with the Void Fleet's advantages, the odds were terrible. We might not come back from this, he said quietly. No, Tejo replied. But if we do nothing, none of us will survive anyway. At least this way, we have a chance. Jiho nodded slowly. He thought about his mother, still living in the tunnels beneath Korea. He thought about the Earth he had fought so hard to protect. He thought about Subin and the rest of his crew. Then we make it count, he said. 3 days later, the human fleet was ready. 52 dark matter warships and 300 conventional vessels. Every ship that could fly, every pilot who could fight. This was humanity's final gamble. Admiral Tejo broadcast one last message to his fleet. Today, we do something no species has done in 10,000 years. We attack the Council of the Stars in their own home. They thought we were weak. They thought we would surrender. They thought they could burn our worlds and murder our children without consequence. He paused. They were wrong. Show them what humanity is made of. The fleet activated their dark matter engines. Reality folded around them. For a moment that lasted forever and no time at all, they traveled through the space between spaces. Through the darkness that Dr. Hannah had learned to fear, then they emerged. The Council's home system was beautiful. 3 garden worlds orbited a golden sun. Crystal cities covered their surfaces. Billions of beings lived there in peace and prosperity. Protected by the greatest military force in the galaxy, the human fleet appeared in the heart of that system like shadows made solid. Alarms screamed across the Council worlds. 8,000 Dominion warships scrambled to respond. Defense platforms powered up weapons that could crack moons. The ancient guardians of the galaxy prepared to destroy these intruders once and for all. High Arbiter Velith watched from his palace as the battle began. He felt no fear. The humans had surprised him once. It would not happen again. Destroy them, he commanded. Every single one. The Dominion fleet attacked with everything they had. Energy beams filled the sky. Missiles streaked through space. The weight of fire directed at the human fleet would have destroyed any. Conventional force in seconds. But the Void Fleet was not conventional. Jiho commanded the Voidbreaker from the front of the formation. His ship phased in and out of normal space, dodging attacks that should have been unavoidable. His crew moved with perfect coordination, their minds linked by the changes the dark matter had made in them. Lieutenant Subin worked the weapons console with mechanical precision. Her hands never hesitated. Her aim never missed. Every shot tore another wound in the enemy fleet, but the Dominion had numbers on their side. For every ship they lost, 10 more took its place. Human vessels began to fall. The UES Shadowstrike vanished in a bloom of fire. The UES Night Fury was torn apart by concentrated plasma fire. We cannot reach the weapon at this rate, Subin reported. Enemy resistance is too heavy. Jiho looked at the tactical display. The celestial fire was directly ahead, a massive structure orbiting the Council's primary world. If they could destroy it, the threat would end. But 300 Dominion warships stood between them and the target. All ships form up on me, Jiho ordered. We punch through together. The Void Fleet concentrated into a tight formation. They drove forward like a spear aimed at the heart of the enemy. Dark matter weapons tore holes in reality. Dominion ships were pulled into the void by the dozens, but the enemy fought back. A plasma lance struck the Voidbreaker's port side. The ship shuddered. Alarms screamed. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, an officer reported. Engine power down to 60%. Jiho gripped his command chair. They were so close. The celestial fire was right there. Another hit. The ship lurched sideways. Engine power at 40%. We are losing stability. Jiho made his decision. All non-essential crew evacuate to the escape pods. Subin, you have command. Subin stared at him. What are you going to do? Someone has to fly this ship into that weapon. He stood up from his chair. Get our people out. Tell them I was proud to serve with them. Captain, no. There has to be another way. There is not. He put a hand on her shoulder. You are the best officer I have ever served with. Now get off my ship, Subin wanted to argue. She wanted to find another solution. But she looked into Jiho's eyes and saw that his mind was made up. The changes from the dark matter had given him a peace that she did not understand. Yes, sir, she whispered. The crew evacuated. Subin took command of the escape pod and watched as the Voidbreaker, now piloted only by Jiho, accelerated toward the celestial fire. The Dominion ships tried to stop him. Weapons fire hammered the damaged vessel from every angle. The hull cracked. Atmosphere vented into space. Jiho flew through the storm. His hands were steady on the controls. His mind was clear. In the final moments, he heard them. The voices from the dark spaces, the ancient things that had helped humanity build these ships. They were not evil, he realized. They were simply curious. They had been watching the universe for longer than stars had existed, and humanity had been interesting enough to help. Thank you, he thought. The Voidbreaker struck the celestial fire at full speed. Jiho activated the dark matter engine at the moment of impact, creating a dimensional collapse that swallowed the weapon entirely. The chain reaction that would have destroyed suns was contained in a bubble of folded space that existed for 1 microsecond before disappearing forever. The celestial fire was gone. So was Captain Kong Ji-Ho. Subin watched the explosion from the escape pod. Tears ran down her face. Around her, the battle continued, but something had changed. The Dominion fleet had seen their greatest weapon destroyed. Their morale shattered. War Marshal Corrin, commanding from his flagship, watched the celestial fire disappear. He looked at the human ships still fighting, still refusing to die. He thought about everything that had happened since this war began. He activated a communication channel to Admiral Teho. "Human commander," Corrin said, his voice heavy with something that might have been respect. "Your species has earned something no one has achieved in 10,000 years. You have earned our surrender. I offer it unconditionally." Teho closed his eyes. He thought about all the people who had died to reach this moment. All the sacrifices. All the pain. "We accept," he said simply. The war was over. 1 year later, Admiral Teho addressed the first Joint Human Council Assembly. The great chamber that had once witnessed calls for humanity's extinction now watched as Earth's representative took his place among equals. Emissary Thesha, now the new High Arbiter, after Velet's removal, formally apologized for the war. She spoke of hope for a new era, of cooperation and peace. Taho accepted the apology with grace. He remembered the promise Daesong had relayed. Humanity would offer mercy. They would be better than their enemies, but not everyone was. Celebrating, Dr. Hannah visited the medical facility where the Void Fleet crews were being monitored. The changes in them had stabilized, but they were permanent. These pilots would never be fully human again. She found one patient sitting alone by a window. His eyes contained swirling darkness, like windows into deep space. "They are still out there," he said without looking at her. "The ones who taught us their secrets. They are waiting on the other side." Hannah sat beside him. "What do they want?" "I do not know. But they have been watching the universe for a very long time, and now they have noticed us." That night, Hannah stood on a balcony overlooking the celebrations in the streets below. Fireworks exploded in the sky. People sang and danced. After years of war, humanity had won. They had secured their place among the stars, but Hannah could not shake the feeling that something larger was happening. Humanity had opened a door to save themselves. What had they let in? She looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there in the dark spaces between galaxies, something ancient was watching. The Council had learned to fear humanity that day. They should have feared what came with them. The first chapter of humanity's story among the stars was over. But Hannah suspected that a much larger story was just beginning. She hoped they were ready for it.